of Navaratri. So it's a beautiful day, auspicious day for us following Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism, whichever name you give to it. Today we have a very special topic as always, and we have a very special person. Today we have in our show Srimati Janava Mata Dasi, or in very popularly known as J Ma. If you're in Dunedin or if you're in New Zealand, if you have done anything with ISKCON in New Zealand, then you would definitely know J Ma. As the name implies, Ma means mother, and she's like a motherly figure for a lot of us here in New Zealand, and I'm sure whoever knew of her abroad. Jaima joined ISKCON, or International Society of Krishna Consciousness, in 1979. So Mataji, as we refer Jaima to, Mataji, has spent the last 42 years of her life dedicated to sharing bhakti yoga practices and philosophy, not only in New Zealand, but worldwide. Jaima has a lot of passion on community building and promoting a more balanced lifestyle across the community. She currently manages the Dunedin Hare Krishna Cultural Center, and she also manages the Krishna Lunch Program. I'm sure if you are someone studying at Otago University, or if you're living in Dunedin, we all know the Hare Krishna Lunch Program, or the Mahaprasadam at the Socks and Clubs. So it's my honor and it's a great pleasure to welcome Jaima onto our show. Here we go. Haribol, Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna,
It's
Prabhuji, and everyone who's listening. It's my great honor to be here with you all today.
what
Thank
a
you for
what a
inviting me.
yeah, no, it's such an honor for me and for us who is listening to have you, and to have you share your knowledge, and more than knowledge, I should use the word love and compassion, because that's whenever we come in into the Sankirtan, that's what we feel. It's more than just the knowledge; it's more the love and the consciousness, the vibration. So thank you so much for coming into the show, and thanks for agreeing to share the divine vibration that you always have. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. So Mataji, we have a number of questions, and it will be great to have you go through those with me today. So my first question is, what is International Society of Krishna Consciousness, or ISKCON, and where did the movement start, and how did it spread?
That's a good question, a big one. So we'll try and condense it into a few minutes. But the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, I suppose you could say, is pretty self-explanatory. It's an international society for the consciousness of Krishna. So I think a beautiful way of introducing the concept is a beautiful story about when an astrologer in India saw Srila Prabhupada's picture.
Mhm.
And he looked at Prabhupada's picture of his face and he said, "This man will build a house in which the whole world can live."
Oh wow! Yeah.
And I think that summed it up very beautifully, because that is exactly what the
Mhm.
International Society for Krishna Consciousness is. It's a house in which the whole world can live, and
Right.
that the foundation of that house
Mhm.
is the Vedic scriptures, is the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the
Mhm.
Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures,
Right.
and of course Srila Prabhupada, who is we say the founder Acharya. He's the personality who brought the Hare Krishna movement to the West. I mean,
Uh-huh.
as anyone who follows Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism or Eastern culture knows,
Mhm.
that these teachings have been around since time immemorial. So it's not something new.
Mhm.
But when Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master, the first thing he said to him when he was 23, when he walked into the room, he picked him out and he said, "You look like an intelligent young man." He said, "Why don't you spread the movement of Krishna, the teachings of Krishna in the Western speaking countries?"
Wow.
And so at that time, Prabhupada took it up as his mission. This
Mhm.
was 23, so, in the early 1920s.
Wow.
and it stayed in his heart as a very powerful instruction from his Guru Maharaj. And then at another time, he told him, if you ever get money, print books. He said, temples may come and go, this may come and go, but the books, they'll last forever.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what Prabhupada did. Even before he came to America in 1965, at the age of 69, he'd already translated Bhagavad Gita from Sanskrit to English,
Right.
and written an elaborate purport on each verse. And for Western speaking people, obviously, who had very little knowledge of this culture at that time. I know because I was around then, born in 1958. So I was a teenager and I was starting to search. So I was reading every book I could get my hands on about spirituality and God consciousness and cosmic consciousness and yoga and meditation, because I wanted to know the answers to a lot of questions.
Right.
So basically, yeah, that's a little history, I suppose you could say, of how the seed was planted there on Indian soil by a teacher in the line of disciplic succession from Lord Krishna himself.
Right.
And in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, so we also have the introduction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared on the earth 500 years ago as an incarnation of Radha and Krishna. So his desire, in fact, he predicted it himself, that in every town and village, my names will be sung, the holy names will be sung. So he planted that seed 500 years ago and then passed the idea down through disciplic succession. Right. And Srila Prabhupada was the one chosen by Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and his guru to come to the West and start an international society for Krishna consciousness. And that's exactly what he did.
Wow. That's an awesome history there, a lot of history.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where is the movement now? What's so we know where it started. Where is it today? Where is the movement today?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like if we kind of cast our minds back to 1969 when Prabhupada arrived in America, he stayed with an Indian family, the Agarwals, that sponsored him for like a month. And then he moved to New York and he was basically all alone. He had 40 rupees in his pocket.
Wow.
He had a 3-tiered burner, which he cooked his strictly vegetarian food in and offered to Krishna. And he also had some books, Srimad Bhagavatams for sale. And that was all he had. And so he started just standing under a tree in a park called Tompkins Square Park, chanting Hare Krishna with the cartels. And people gathered around because they were just so amazed at this Swami from out of space, standing under a tree chanting this exotic mantra. And so that's a pretty amazing beginning. And from there, some followers came, and then it spread to San Francisco and LA, and then to London, where he met the Beatles, and George Harrison, became very interested and wrote the song My Sweet Lord with the Hare Krishna mantra in it, and became friends with the devotees and helped popularize Krishna consciousness actually all over the world. Right. And then gradually those disciples that came, they went out to right across the globe, to every city of the world, and started Krishna consciousness centers under the direction and the instruction of Srila Prabhupada. And that's basically how the movement flourished to the point now where there's millions of members worldwide. There's hundreds of restaurants, temples, farming communities, and Krishna consciousness, you could say the seed that he planted back then has flourished into a very fruit-bearing tree. So
awesome. Yeah, great.
It's a pretty exciting adventure.
Yeah. Wow. So like when you look back at history and when you put timelines, it's amazing how, like, the analogy is awesome. Just putting a seed in the soil and then it branches out. There's a tree, and then we get more seeds getting carried away, being planted elsewhere. So that's awesome. So where do you see the future for this movement? Like, what is the future looking like for the movement?
Well, I'd say the future is incredibly bright, because as we look around us and see that the material civilization that we've all part of is starting to crumble, it seems, that the lifestyle that people have been living, and the way that we've been treating the earth and our, you know, sometimes lack of commitment to spiritual life has unfortunately created a situation in the world that's uncomfortable for most of us. And so I think at this point, it's an ideal opportunity for people to kind of wake up a little bit and take another look at things and see how they can recalibrate and perhaps live life differently so that they're not so affected by the things that are going on in the material world, so to speak.
Right.
Jesus had a good saying that I love, you know, to be in this world but not of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
So
huge.
when Prabhupada, sorry, yeah.
No, I was just
When
going to say
Prabhupada first came to the, sorry, no, you go.
No. So I was just going to say that there is a huge difference between what you said, living off the world and living in the world are two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Prabhupada came to the West, they interviewed him and they said, "What's your message?" And he said, "My message is simple living and high thinking."
Yeah.
And I think if you unpack that, it's a very deep and profound and instructive statement that he made, that if we could make that the basis of our lives, also simple living and high thinking.
Right.
So, you know, that way we minimize our entanglement in material affairs and we maximize our participation in spiritual affairs, and then we live happily in this world. We still do our duty, we're still good parents, we're still good employees, we're still good employers, we're still, you know, very conscious of our actions and our reactions, but at the same time, our goal is set on something higher, you know, something eternal.
That's right.
So,
I think you kind of read my next question, talking about the timeline with history and present moment and the future. I was going to ask, so what is the actual aim of the movement? And kind of you partly already answered that question, saying it's simple living, I thinking. What else are the aims of the Krishna conscious movement, Mataji?
well, Lord Chaitanya, he gave us a good instruction. Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a bit of a delay there, but you know, the instruction that he gave us was that wherever you go, whomever you meet, tell them about Krishna.
Right.
So basically, for a Hare Krishna devotee, you could say they're like an Ayurvedic physician.
Right.
You know, and so every person that they meet will take the pulse.
Yeah.
And we'll see what their consciousness, what their lifestyle, you know, we'll listen to their hearts, we'll connect with them, and we'll find out how to help them make progress in spiritual life. So,
right.
You know, it'll be different for every person. This is called Varnash Ram Dham, you know, where we have Sanatan Dham, which are the eternal principles of religion, but within the Sanatan Dham is Varnash Ram Dham, where we engage people and we occupy ourselves according to our nature.
Right.
And according to our ashram, you know, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. Not everybody is a brahmachari.
Yes.
Majority of the people are grihasthas. They have families, they have jobs, they have lives to live. But somehow or other, the mission of the movement and Prabhupada's mission was to give everybody that opportunity to become Krishna conscious, to become conscious of Krishna.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So everybody, so irrespective of irrespective of where you are at your life or what age or what dharma you belong to, there's always something that's in there for you to practice.
Absolutely. And Krishna, it says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna, he says that, you know, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or some water, I will accept. He's not making it that hard. You know, he does say, try to surrender to me. But if you can't do that, then at least, you know, try to think of me. And if you can't do that, then at least be a good person.
That's right.
So, you know, Krishna himself is first of all setting the bar high because he wants us to attain perfection and go back home, back to the spiritual world where we actually belong, where there's no more birth, death, disease, and old age to deal with. But if we're not quite ready for that leap, then at least we can start with small steps.
Sure.
You know, so, you know, I was thinking, because we discussed some of the questions and you were going to ask me what's my favorite verse in the Bhagavad Gita, but I mean, I have so many, but I think the one that I really settled on,
Yeah.
we can have more later, but I think it's really
Yeah.
pertinent to discuss it right now, is the fact
Yeah.
that Krishna says just try to learn the truth
Mm-hmm.
by approaching a bona fide spiritual teacher,
Right.
inquire from them submissively,
Mm-hmm.
and render service unto them. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
Mm.
So Krishna mentions that very, very early on in the Bhagavad Gita, not at the end, but at the beginning, more or less, chapter 2. So he's telling us something very important, that if we want to make progress in spiritual life, if we want to become God conscious, if we want to practice Sanatana Dharma, then we do need to have qualified teachers, because if we don't, we're kind of stabbing in the dark. We're just making it up as we go, or we're trying to string pieces of information together to get a clear picture. But as you know, as an academic, that's not always that successful, is it? You know, it can end up with some very wrong conclusions and some poor practices. So I kind of feel like that's a really good starting place to understand the need to have bona fide spiritual teachers.
Sure.
And to know what bona fide means. Because how can you have a bona fide teacher if you don't know what bona fide means, right?
Exactly. That's so
yeah,
right.
so Arjuna asked that question. He says to Krishna, well, how do I recognize someone who is bona fide? And Krishna explains, you know, you can tell a self-realized soul by how they act, how they speak, how they sit, how they walk about. You know, someone who's, you know, steady in honor and dishonor and fame and infamy, who's not troubled by disease and distress, you know, that desires and distress, you know, equiposed, compassionate, peaceful, clean, you know, wise, knowledgeable of the scriptures. You know, these are the qualities of a self-realized soul. So when we find such people, then it's really so important that we learn how to associate with them in such a way that we can grow spiritually.
Sure. So there's quite a few layers that's going on. So like you're saying, like, one is to have the question of, maybe even not at the levels of who am I, that's a big philosophical question, but even to think about, do I need a teacher? Because often people I come across, they think they know everything, like, you know, they don't need a teacher. So a good start is like, do I need a teacher? And then the next question is, who's a bona fide teacher? So there's quite a few layers that you've already clarified. So thank you, Mataji. That's awesome. Now, just following on, what is the basic siddhanta that informs the Krishna consciousness movement?
Good question. Well, you just alluded to it in one of your comments. You know, Prabhupada said the difference between a human and an animal is that a human will ask these questions: who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? Is there a God? And if so, what is my relationship with that God? So if we're asking those questions, then it means we are ready for awakening. We're ready for enlightenment. We're ready for the path of bhakti yoga, the yoga of love and devotion. As you were saying at the beginning, you know, there's a big difference between gyan and vigyan. So gyan means to have knowledge. Knowledge is available everywhere. Anyone can have that knowledge, but to get wisdom, you have to take the knowledge and put it into practice. You know, just like if you want to bake a cake, you can have the recipe and you can even have all the ingredients, but if you don't actually mix them together and put them in the oven, then you'll have no cake.
Correct.
So knowing things and applying things, that's the difference between gyan and vigyan. So, you know, first of all, we have to ask the questions, and then we have to know where to find the answers. And then when we find the answers, we need to put them into practice. So all of that is explained in Bhagavad Gita. That's basically, you know, the ABCs of spiritual life. That's the introduction that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. He's asking him, hey, I don't feel right. You know, this is not happening here. I don't want to fight. You know, my family are there. What should I do? And then Krishna explains to him, you know, why are you freaking out? The soul's eternal. There's no birth or death. You know, he takes him through a process of karma yoga, dhyana yoga, etc., and comes to the point of finally bhakti yoga.
Right.
And
So
all
that,
those answers are there, but what are we going to do with those answers? That's my question.
mm, yeah, exactly. Knowledge without practice is just knowledge. Yeah.
I
So
mean, it's a start. It's better than having no knowledge at all. That's for sure.
no, that's
You
so
know,
true too. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
it's
Yeah.
valuable. It's transcendental knowledge.
Mm,
But
correct.
what we do with that knowledge, that really makes a difference, and that also really makes the difference in the world as well,
Mm,
isn't it?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No, that's
Jesus
right.
said, yeah, you know a man by his fruits, or you know a woman by her fruits. That's how you can tell whether someone's actually spiritually awake
Hmm.
and connected to the divine, is that they will be behaving in a way which is divine.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Now, this question I've had this in my mind for a long time, but I think this is I had to wait like nearly 10 years to ask this question. How did you become a devotee, Mataji? This I want to. Yeah, this has been a question in my mind for a
Good
long, long time.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can say by the grace of God, that's for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and by the grace of God's devotees. So I think, ever since I was a little girl, I always had a desire to be connected to God. It was my safe place as a child. It
Right.
was Jesus that I prayed to and
Mm-hmm.
felt very close to,
Hmm.
and God was always very real to me. It wasn't like a foreign concept. I grew up in a Christian family,
Right.
and I already had a relationship, but I wanted to know God more. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to find out what he looked like and where he lived and
Hmm.
what he did. And I also wanted to really explore the depths of my relationship with God. And I also wanted to be able to help others do the
Hmm.
same,
Hmm.
because I used to look around me and I used to see that a lot of people weren't smiling, and I was like, what's up? Why aren't people happy? I'd sit on the bus and, people would be sitting there reading their newspapers, not talking to each other or whatever. And I was like, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
why aren't people happy?
Yeah.
And so I used to pray like that, please, like there must be some purpose to my life. So if
Hmm.
you show me what it is, then I'll happily do it. Like, I'm yours, but just show me what you want me to do with my life. That was my prayer.
Wow.
And yeah, and then just from a young age, I did start exploring spirituality, because
Mm,
I felt that was the solution, because
mm,
everybody around me had everything else. They had material, they had washing machines and dryers and televisions and cars and money in
mm.
the bank and kids and houses. And my best friend was from one of the wealthiest families in
Wow.
New Zealand, and she used to come to school in a Rolls Royce and have a banquet in her lunchbox. But
Wow. Yeah.
she actually committed suicide when she was 18,
Oh.
because she was so unhappy. So it
Mm,
was like,
mm,
if that's what success means, then what did it buy for her? It didn't buy her happiness. It didn't buy her
mm,
life.
mm,
So
mm, mm.
I guess that really propelled me to even further to find a way of being able to
Mhm.
just help people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
understand who they are and why they're here and how to be happy. And so then I started reading books and doing meditation. And I mean, this is in the 70s, so
Wow.
it
Yeah.
wasn't as common in society. Basically, you had church, and then
Mm,
transcendental meditation had just come in, and there was a few
mm, mm.
books coming in from overseas. But where I grew up in Christchurch, there wasn't any Hare Krishna devotees yet. So
Mhm. Mhm.
there I was in my home, just praying down at the beach
Wow.
and waiting for something to happen, and reading every book I could lay my hands on about how to become God conscious,
Wow.
and writing a lot of poetry
Yeah.
and loving music. But then one day my brother went to Australia for a holiday, and
Mm,
when he came back, he bought
mm.
me a Bhagavad Gita,
Wow.
Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, and an
Yeah.
album, a record album with some Hare Krishna chanting on it.
Mhm.
And as soon as I saw that Bhagavad Gita, it was just like, whoa! The hairs on my body stood on end, and I fell in love with the book. I didn't fully understand it, but I was just, and the pictures and everything. I just didn't put it down. I took it everywhere with me, wherever I went,
Yeah.
trying to understand it. I planted a little cabbage tree outside my bedroom window, and I told my mum, every day when you come home from work, you chant this mantra to the cabbage tree. So she was chanting Hare Krishna to the cabbage tree, and it was
Wow.
doing very well, and she liked it. So
Yeah.
that was a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then same when I played the album, old vinyl album on the record player outside, and when I heard that chanting, Prabhupada chanting, I just burst into tears. I was just like,
Wow.
what is this? And it was just stunning. And I just was like, wow, I got to find these people. I've got to find the source of this amazingness. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a long story, but it's a very amazing story about how Krishna, made all the arrangements. Some of my friends became devotees.
Wow.
Just the way things turned out, and
Yeah.
eventually I ended up going to the farm in Auckland,
Yeah.
1979,
Yeah.
and never left. That was it. That was how I joined. As soon as I met the devotees,
Yeah.
I stayed. It was like, there's nothing. This is it. These are my family. This is what I want to do. This resonates completely
Wow.
with me. These people practice what they preach. They're beautiful people. They're so kind. I love dancing, chanting, and feasting. I love philosophy.
Yes.
Everything I wanted was there, and it was just the perfect vehicle to be able to express myself as well, by being able to go out into the public arena and share this beautiful gift with others. So
yeah,
that's how it happened. That's the short version.
no. Oh, I would really like to listen to the long version, because it just gives me goosebumps. It's like, you can see the excitement with which you share or narrate the journey. It's like, you can feel the vibration inside you, because, like you said, you were in Christchurch back in the 70s, where probably there was no ISKCON temple in New Zealand, and
Nope.
for you to kind of go to Auckland and then meet devotees is like, wow. Yeah, that's Krishna's plans for you, Mataji.
100%. 100%. And
So how
it
long?
was amazing, because the person who bought me to
Mhm.
Krishna Consciousness, I later on ended up marrying him. So
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and he's the temple president in Auckland now, Kala Samvara. So
Wow.
not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme.
Exactly. Wow, that's great. That's awesome to
Mm.
hear. So how long were you in Auckland, Mataji? How long were you in Auckland before you moved to Dunedin?
I joined 79 in Auckland, and then
Mhm.
we actually, me and another girl, I'd been there for 6 months,
Mhm.
and the temple president in Auckland said, I want you to go to Christchurch and sell some. We used to sell these candles that we made to raise funds so that we could establish our centres and schools and give away free food and distribute the books, etc. So he sent us down there with a van full of candles, but I was quite happy about that, because Christchurch was my home city and
Yes.
my family lived there, and I hadn't seen them for a few years.
Mhm.
So we went down there and we sold all the candles, and so he said, why don't you just stay there and we'll send you some more candles and some more books. And that was the start of the Christchurch temple. So then we
Wow.
used to have, we had a friend who lived there,
Mhm.
Jamuna Mai, and she lived in Waltham, and so we used to have a Sunday program at her house, just a few of us.
Mhm.
And then a couple of other devotees came down, Astor City and his wife Ghana Murti, and they came down, and then we got a place in Latimer Square, and from there it grew. So that was 2 years in Christchurch, and then I actually went to Sydney. They had a party for all the single women. I wasn't married at that point, and we used to go out and do fundraising and book distribution. So I was part of that. It was the go-getters. And
Yes.
then I went to Melbourne for 2 years, and I lived there, and that was a very beautiful experience. Melbourne Temple and devotees. It's such a beautiful place to practice Krishna consciousness. And then that was 1981. I came back to New Zealand, to Auckland again at the farm in
Yep.
Uvashan, and got married to my husband there,
Mhm.
81. We stayed there for 7 years, and we did a lot of fundraising to help build the temple that's there now. When we first went there, it was just the farmhouse
Oh, wow.
at the front of the
Yeah.
property, and we used
Yeah.
to take our bath in the cow shed,
Yeah.
on the tap coming out of the wall, and wade through the mud on the rainy days into our caravans where we stayed. But
Wow.
after 7 years of full-time fundraising, we got enough money, and we built a temple, and we built the school, and we built the Grihasta units, and now New Varshan is like an amazing
Wow.
spiritual eco village. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
then
beautiful.
we
Yeah.
went to Wellington for a couple of years, and we started the centre there, and then back to Christchurch. for another 11 years.
Wow.
And we ran the temple there and the restaurants and university preaching programs. And we had a farm that we purchased and used to grow vegetables at. And then
Wow.
1997,
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine was coming down to Dunedin to go to Teachers College. And she said, will you come with me? And I'm like, why not? It was time for a change. And I thought I was coming here to kind of semi-retire. I was like, I'll go to Dunedin and I'll just chill out. And, I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And, started the vegetarian cooking class. And from there, ended up, feeding lunch to 250, 300 students 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And we now have a beautiful centre here, donated by one of our members whose mother left them an inheritance. And we have programs 3 times a week, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. And we also still continue to do the Krishna lunch program. And how do we get onto that? But anyway, that's the history.
No, that's great. Because I'm really happy that you chose Dunedin to semi-retire. So people like us who came to
me
Dunedin.
too. I love this place. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a very special place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now,
and I've met some very amazing people here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place.
Including your good self and your wife and your 2 beautiful daughters.
Our blessings, Mataji. Now, when we come in, we do a lot of chanting. ISKCON worldwide, it's very popular for chanting. And often when we do the mantra, we refer to that as a Maha Mantra. So what is a Maha Mantra? And why is it called a Maha Mantra, not just mantra?
Very good question. Very good question. So Maha means great, right? So great. And Man means mind and Tra means to deliver. So the Maha Mantra is the greatest mantra for deliverance of the mind from illusion. Right. So it's written in so many Upanishads and Puranas and different Vedic scriptures. It is alluded to there that the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is called the great mantra for deliverance because it actually contains all Vedic mantras. Right. These are direct names for Radha and Krishna. So Hare is O Radha, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rama, right, is another name for Krishna. It means the reservoir of all pleasure, but it also includes Lord Ram and also Balaram, Krishna's brother. So all those 3 names are contained. It's a very powerful name also. So the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting that mantra, it said even once you could become free from more sins than you can possibly commit.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty amazing. And that's the Svetashvara Upanishad. It's not me making it up. It's written in the scriptures that this is how powerful this sound vibration is. Right. So because these are names for God. So as I was speaking before, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of Krishna that came to this earth 500 years ago, known as the most merciful incarnation of God, he propagated this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra all over, and he was the one who predicted that it would also spread all over the world. So even though he was a great scholar, he ran a school in his youth. When he was 16 years old, he had his own school. He defeated every Pundit in India. They came from near and far to try and take on Nimai Pandit, but even as a small boy, he completely dismantled them. So nicely, but yeah. He was God. How can you argue with God, right? So anyway, he didn't write any books. He asked his followers, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, to write the books, but he left behind 8 beautiful verses called the Shikshastika. These are probably my favorite prayers of all. Right. And the first verse, because they're all about the chanting of the holy names and the glories of chanting the holy names. So the first verse of the Shikshastikam, he says, Chaito Dapana Marjanam, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. All glories to this chanting of the holy name, this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for lifetimes and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. In other words, by chanting the holy names, you completely eradicate your karmic debt, and you're free to go back home. I mean, that's just the first line of this verse, right?
Wow.
He
Yeah.
says, all glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for lifetimes, extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. He says, the chanting of the holy names is the prime benediction for humanity at large. So it doesn't just benefit us when we do it, but actually the whole of humanity is benefited when we chant these holy names.
Right.
The sound vibration of the Maha Mantra or any names of God will travel around the globe 12 times every time you chant those mantras, right? That's how powerful they are. Just like we have mobile phones now and we can press a few buttons, or we're sitting in different cities and we're seeing each other and we're talking to each other. So this is vibration traveling through the airways, right? So the spiritual sound vibration, God's holy name, how much more powerful is that? It's circling the globe every time we chant these holy names, and it's benedicting the whole of humanity. That's how auspicious and powerful this activity is.
Right.
He says, this Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. In other words, if you study all the Vedas, all the scriptures of the world, and boil it down to an essence, the essence is chant the holy names, chant the holy names, chant the holy names. That's the recommended process for this age of Kali, right? Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. Kalo nasteva, 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 gatiranyita. That's what Lord Chaitanya said. Just chant the holy names. Chant the holy. He said it 3 times. Chant the holy names. You don't have to worry about anything else. He said that 3 times. So just chant. So I think he meant it, and I know that he did, because that's what I've been doing for the last 42 years, and I can tell you, it is profound, it is powerful, it is life-changing, it is transformative. I mean, why would you do it for 2.5 hours every day, and sometimes 12 hours when we have our 12-hour kirtan programs, if there wasn't something going on, right?
That's true. That's right.
So, I'll finish the verse because it's just so full of blessings, and it makes you want to chant. When you hear it, it's like, man, I want to try that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So he not only does it benedict the whole of humanity, not only is it the essence of all transcendental knowledge, he said it increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, which is the nature of the soul. Sat, Chit, Ananda. That's who we really are, right? And because we're covered by so much illusion, so much fog, so much entanglement and things that aren't real, we forget who we are, isn't it? Sometimes it happens. Even when we're asleep and we wake up in the morning, it's like, whoa, our heads, isn't it? So
it's all over the show,
that's the nature of illusion. We forget who we are. So he says that by chanting the holy name, it increases the ocean of transcendental bliss. It immediately puts us in touch with our true spiritual nature, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
Right.
So what is the nectar for which we are always anxious? What is the nature of the soul, right? It's to love and to be loved. That's why we do what we do, isn't it? It's why we do what we do, to love and to be loved. So by this process, this bhakti yoga, the yoga of love and devotion, where we're yoga means to link up, where we're linking up with the divine by the mantra, right? By the chanting of the holy names, connecting directly with the presence of the divine, then we're bathed in that love. We're bathed in that Krishna prema pradayate that Lord Chaitanya is freely giving. We're soaking it up. We're filling up with it, and we're exploding with it, so that wherever we go,
we're taking it.
We're sharing it with others.
Yes.
Right, isn't it?
So that's great, yeah.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we want to be happy. That's also the nature of the soul, isn't it? Pleasure seeking. So if our goal in life is to be happy, and our goal in life is to love and to be loved, then let's go to the source of all pleasure, the source of all love. Let's plug into that.
Yeah.
Let's fill up with that, and then let's share that with others. I mean, what a world it would be.
Amazing place to live for sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it's completely doable.
Mm,
It's so simple,
mm,
like.
mm. Yeah.
Anyway, don't get me started. It's my favorite topic, but
No, that's
that's my
great. No, no,
dream.
please keep, yeah, please keep going.
My dream is to see that happening all over the world. That is the medicine, like Lord
Mm,
Chaitanya says, wake
mm,
up, sleeping souls, wake up,
mm,
sleeping souls.
mhm,
I've brought you the medicine to destroy the illusion of Maya.
mm,
Now pray for this Harinam Maha Mantra and take it. It's so simple. Hare
mm.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Rama,
Hare.
Hare Hare.
Even a child can take part, and you know that, isn't it? With your
Uh,
very own children, like
yep, absolutely.
when they came to the temple and we sat and we sang with them, and she was dancing in a bassinet, smiling and so happy.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. She was still
So
what, 8 months.
she's not indoctrinated by any teaching. She felt the vibration of the holy name. It touched her heart, and she started smiling and dancing.
Exactly, and she
So
still dances for the same song.
exactly,
Yeah, that's
because
it.
that's the nature of the soul, right? The
That's right.
body is the vehicle for the soul, but the soul itself is always connected to the divine.
That's so true.
We
That's so
just
true.
we just put too much static on the line, so we just have to remove the static, and then we get a clear picture,
That's right.
a good connection.
It's essential. Absolutely. So, Mataji, we're talking about Maha Mantra. So one of the aspects with ISKCON is doing the japa. We do the japa
Mala.
with the mala, with the beads. So, is there any, so for a common man who has no knowledge about ISKCON or Krishna conscious yet, are there any particular numbers of japa that rounds that we need to do every day, or is there any prescription? 1, 2, 16, 24,
200.
200?
That's up
Yeah,
to that's up to the individual. Like longest journey starts with the first step, right?
right.
So in the next verse of the Shikshastakam prayers, Lord Chaitanya tells us that there's no hard and fast rules for chanting these names.
Great.
So we start where we feel comfortable. There is a system.
Hmm.
And can you excuse me for 1 second? I'll get my
Yeah.
beads, and then I can show you the system.
Yep. Sure. That's great. That's better.
Yep. So these are our japamala.
Yep.
And so for devotees who take initiation, where they make a vow, right?
Hmm.
They promise to chant 16 times 108 on these beads every day.
Right.
So one bead, one mantra. Right?
Hmm.
Hare
Hmm.
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare.
and then next bead.
Next beat.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, like that. So there's 108
Yes.
beads on here. 108
Yes.
is a very auspicious number, right? We know from
Yep. Yep.
Sanatan Dharma.
Correct.
And 108 gopis, 108 principal gopis.
Hmm.
It's a very, very, for many reasons. I looked it up on Google a while ago, and there's thousands of reasons why 108 is a very auspicious number.
Hmm.
But it's also the number of herds of cows that Krishna used to have, and this is how he used to count the herds of cows too, by
Oh wow.
counting them on his beads. So when we
Oh
chant on
wow.
our japa beads, we can think of Krishna herding the cows.
Right.
Um,
Oh
so
wow.
So when we take initiation, we take a vow to chant 16 times 108.
Right.
And one round takes, say, 7 to 10 minutes. So usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right.
But that's for an initiated devotee. But somebody who just wants to try it out and say, hey, I want to see if this works like a scientific experiment, then any number of mantras that you chant is brilliant. But
Right.
when you chant a prescribed number of rounds, and when you focus your mind, especially the beads are very good because they help you focus the sense of touch,
Yes.
and they make a mind-body connection, right?
Connection.
Between the
Yeah.
mind, the tongue,
Yeah.
the touch,
Touch.
the ears,
Yeah.
right? You're engaging all those senses in that process of meditation, so the absorption is greater.
Mm.
And therefore you can really feel the powerful benefit of that chanting. So Yeah, I mean, all our Krishna centers, and you can even buy those beads online.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not expensive. And
yeah. Mm.
but even if you don't have the beads, then you can just sit and chant Hare
Shan-
Krishna anywhere, anytime, any place. Like
mm. True.
there's always blessings. But for
Mm.
somebody who's interested, we can put my details up at the end, and I'm more
Yep.
than happy to help them along the journey. That's why we're here. When you've been given a most precious gift, then you're more than happy and more than enthusiastic to share it with others. So
Absolutely.
that's our purpose. that's
Yeah.
that's why we're here, is to help share the love.
Yeah. I was once talking with the Prabhuji at Auckland Temple, and he was
Hmm.
telling me a bit of an insight. He was doing japa, and he told me that he actually knows the individual beats. Once you start
Hmm.
doing japa like 16 times, 24 times, or 48 times, he said for someone like me who's like coming in temple, worshipping and going off, it's a normal mala or a bead for me, but for him
Hmm.
it's a huge personal connection. And he told me that he knows the individual beats. So when he's eyes closed, meditating and doing the Maha Mantra, but just by the touch he would know which bead he's on. I was amazed by that, but that by that insight, like how many times you have done it, so many times that you've actually started developing a personal connection. Each individual bead is going to be definitely different. It's all like looking round or spherical in shape, but
Yeah,
they're all individually different. So he has connected himself so much that he can actually know the difference between the individual beads. That was amazing. That was stunning. Yeah. Now,
that's
moving
what
on.
that's what I call absorption.
Yeah. Not true.
That's brilliant. I mean,
Mm,
the mind is crazy. Like Arjuna said, it's more difficult to control than the raging wind.
mm.
So,
And recently there is something called acceptance and commitment therapy. And one of the
mhm,
basic principles is that you accept whatever it is, bit like the Walden way of saying it's karma, it's destiny. You accept it, and then you actually commit for making a positive change. And if you look at some of the basic principles of that sort of a treatment, it's very similar to what we do in terms of japa and meditation and chanting. It's because you're committing to doing the chanting, and it needs a lot of mental discipline to sit down, even for one round, even if it's 10 minutes. A lot of people in this busy world don't have 10 minutes to sit down. So it's a form of commitment, which in many ways, modern science even tells us it's actually therapeutic. It's actually good for us.
definitely.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of experiments now. Like in neuroscience,
Mm.
neurophysics, measuring the brain waves of people who do meditation and
Yes.
yoga and mantra chanting and music, etc., and finding incredible
Insights.
psychological and physical benefits
Mm.
from these practices. And
Yep.
it's so true. Like when I first started chanting, it was so hard for me because I just come from the world where you go wherever your mind takes
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here I was, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, a whole bunch of devotees walking up and down chanting on these beads, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's this?
Yeah.
And my mind was going crazy. It was like, nah, don't
Uh,
do it. That
yes.
it's silly. It's just your vain repetition.
Mm.
And then, but over the course of time, because I realized no, because look at these people that I'm around. They're so peaceful. They're so
Calm.
compassionate. They're so
Mm.
sattvic. They're
Mm.
so
Mm.
beautiful hearts.
Mm.
There must be something going on here that
Mm.
I want to find out what it is.
Mm.
So
Mm.
lucky for me, I'm a determined person. So I'm like, no, I'm going to stick at this. I want to find out. There must be pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so
Sure.
over the course of time, as the years have gone by, what used to be the least favorite thing. I love the kirtan. I love dancing. I love getting out there. I love cooking. Anything busy, that
Yeah.
was fine for me.
Yeah.
But that was like, ooh, it was trying to trap the genie in the bottle.
Yeah.
But now it's my most favorite thing. It's the thing that I look forward to. It's the thing that I
Absolutely.
love because it's so peaceful
Mm.
and so grounding and
Mm.
so
Mm.
connecting and so balancing and
Mm.
just so beautiful, because
Mm.
it's actually what I call quality time with Krishna,
Yeah.
with Radha and Krishna.
Yeah.
I'm
So
calling
true.
out their names. You
Mm.
know, another meditation that one of our spiritual teachers gave us, he said that when you're fingering the beads,
Mm.
meditate that you're massaging Krishna's toes.
Ah.
So each bead, like those, my beads are very smooth, you know, because I've had them for
Yes.
a long time. And so,
Yes.
you know, each
Yes.
bead is like, it could easily be Krishna's toes. So, you know, we're
Absolutely.
chanting, you're
Ah.
like, you're massaging Krishna's toes, you're
Yeah.
massaging
Yeah.
Radharani's toes. So
Yeah.
by the time you're
Yeah.
finished massaging their toes for a couple of hours, then you're definitely very happy
Yeah. Mataji.
massaging God's toes.
Yes, I will. I will remember that forever now. Thank you, Mataji. That's a great
So
insight.
nice, huh?
Yeah, it is. Now moving on
It's always
to
nice
my
to connect things to the person.
correct. Yeah, that personal connection is actually really important.
So
If if
important.
if there is no connection, then there is no point, I think.
Yeah, and
Um,
especially in bhakti yoga because it's the yoga of love and devotion, you know. So
mm,
who are we loving and who are we devoted to? You know, Krishna, the source of all pleasure, you know, Radha, Krishna's eternal consort. These personalities are real and they're just waiting for us to connect with
mm,
them.
true.
So why not take that opportunity? I say, you know, it's not
Yeah,
what you know, it's who you know.
absolutely. That's so true. Now moving on to my most favorite topic, um, about prasadam. And again, it's not just prasadam, it's mahaprasadam. And I must thank you
Hmm.
so much, Mataji, because when I was doing my PhD at Wataga University, every afternoon, often you would have seen me at the lunch. And like me, there are so many, like hundreds or thousands of students or people in Dunedin who very thankful for the mahaprasadam. It was so yummy, so tasty. You can't have less, you can just have more. And two, it was so affordable. Financial cost has a huge implications for students, and I can't be thankful enough that it was one yummy, and it was very affordable, and it was shared with, again, love and compassion. So why is it called mahaprasadam again? And why, how did it find its place in ISKCON? Because I don't see, like, there are a lot of different branches of Sanatan Dharma, or even Vaishnavism, for that matter. But often I find that ISKCON actively promotes Mahaprasadam. Maybe promotes is not a nice word. Maybe but
It's all good.
yeah. So
Yeah, I
what
hear
is
what you
yeah
mean.
yeah. So what is Mahaprasadam, and what's its place significance in ISKCON?
Well, I think we could start with a quote from Srila Prabhupada, and he said that prasadam, Mahaprasadam, is our secret weapon. So there's a saying that the way to a man or a woman's heart is through their stomach, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody loves good food. So if you take, you know, you make food and you offer it to God. So prasad means mercy, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when we cook, we're not cooking for our own senses, our own tongue. We're cooking for the pleasure of the Lord. We're actually cooking for Krishna. We're cooking for Radha. We're cooking for our spiritual master. We're cooking for the saints.
Hmm.
And so while we're cooking it, we're in that consciousness. And
Hmm.
today, when I was making the samosas, as I was making the twists, I think I made 80 samosas today.
Oh wow.
Um, as I was twisting them, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and praying, you know, let whoever eats this samosa uh, attain love of God. That was my
Mm,
prayer, you know, that
mm,
let them
mm,
always be chanting your holy names.
mm,
And so when you're making food with that in mind, or you're offering it to the Lord, you're asking Him to bless it and bless whoever eats it, that they will become Krishna conscious,
mhm,
then that becomes prasadam. Prasadam means mercy. So you're
mhm.
taking something, you're offering it to the Lord, right?
Yep.
And then He's blessing it, and then you're offering it to the people.
Mhm,
So that's why it's so potent. I actually had a boy in Wellington now, but he used to come to the lunches like you, and he wrote
mm,
me a letter and he said, I just want to thank you. He said, when I used to come, he said, I just love the food and I love the environment
mm,
and your smiling face. He said, but
mm,
I didn't know anything about Hare Krishna. I just love the food, and you're
mm,
always so kind to me.
mm,
But when he went to Wellington, he met the devotees there, and he just
mm.
immediately joined, and now he's the head of the Brahmachari ashram there, and he was
Oh
just
wow.
saying thank you so much for creating that opportunity. So, there's the prasadam doing its job itself, right? I was so busy feeding the students, I didn't have a lot of time to stop and
No.
talk.
No.
But just by eating that food that's been blessed, then his consciousness is changing.
Yes.
And I see that every single day. So Prabhupada, he had a request one time. He was in India in Mayapur, and he saw some local village children rummaging through the bin looking for some scraps of food. And Prabhupada started to cry. He was just so upset that these children were hungry, and he stopped and he turned around and he said, go and give them some prasadam. And he said, and my request is that no one within a 10-mile radius of any of our Hare Krishna centers ever go hungry. So make sure that there's plentiful prasadam for all.
Wow.
And so ever since that day, we've started this Hare Krishna Food for Life program. And around the world, on a daily basis, we distribute over 1 million plates of food.
Wow.
And I did a rough calculation last year of how many plates that we've served here in Dunedin, and I figured it out that we've also served over 500,000 plates of prasadam here in Dunedin. So
wow, just
not
last
bad
year.
for a little. Yeah,
Wow.
over the course of 24
Yes.
years, since
Oh, yes.
1997. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, we do, say 1,000 plates a week. 52 times 1,000 is 50,000 a year, and we've been here for
Yeah. Wow.
25 years. So yeah, it was over 500,000 plates, just one person. So imagine if everybody
joined in,
started distributing prasadam, and we can do it so easily. Like everything we cook in our home in Vedic culture, it used to be like that when the grihastas would cook, they would go and stand at the door and they would yell out prasadam, and anybody who was around could come and eat. And then when they'd fed everyone, then they would take prasadam. That's Vedic culture. They're always thinking about how to give, right?
Correct.
So just imagine if everybody did that, and wherever we went, like we have here our beloved Karuna Sindhu with his bags of nuts and dates that he hands out to every person he meets.
Yes.
And people love them, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that food stuff is not ordinary. When that food stuff is blessed by God, then it becomes the mercy of God. So that's what prasadam and maha means, great. So great mercy. Maha prasadam is the prasadam straight off the plate, straight off the Lord's plate. That's called maha prasadam.
Right.
So whether it's prasadam or maha prasadam, it's all prasadam, and whoever eats it, they will become God conscious. And that's our dream. That's my long-term dream, to have like a food truck on every corner at Krishna Kai. That's the name of it. And everyone can come out for dinner, just like Mr. Whippy. They come out and get their ice creams. Well, they can come out and they can get prasadam.
Yes.
And they can take it home and they can eat it, and they'll begin to chant Hare Krishna, and then all the problems of the world will be solved.
Yeah, definitely. I would sincerely pray for your dream to come true. I'm sure it will come true one day.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? When Prabhupada first came to America, he was sitting on a park bench, and an older man came and sat next to him, and he told him, Swamiji, how many of you are there? How many temples do you have?
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said, I have thousands of disciples and thousands of temples.
Yes.
And at that point, he had no disciples and no temples, but his vision and his desire was great, and then Krishna fulfilled. So they say, man proposes and God disposes. So as long as we have those desires, then eventually they'll become fulfilled for sure.
Absolutely.
And if Colonel Sanders can do it, then why can't Krishna do it?
Yes. Definitely.
Isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. I really love the name Krishna Kai. Wow, that's beautiful.
Nice, huh? I like it.
Beautiful, yeah.
And I want to have a beautiful, like, peacock colored caravan with a big peacock feather on it, Krishna Kai, and then we'll just go feed the world.
You can have a nice Krishna with a flute, and then there's a nice peacock. Yeah, I can see the truck already, Mataji. So
me too. I can see a fleet of them.
Yes, awesome. Now, the last question: what's your favorite quote from Bhagavatam or Gita or Chaitanya Upanishad? What's your favorite quote, Mataji, and why?
Okay, my favorite.
Mm.
I have so many favorites. I've given you two already. I
Yes.
think the Shikshastakam is probably my favorite verses, but
Mhm.
there's another beautiful verse from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Taisham satata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam
Mhm.
dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamu payantite. He says, to those who are constantly devoted and
Mhm.
worship me with love,
Mhm.
I give them the understanding by which they can come to me.
Right.
So I think that's just a very beautiful encouragement from Krishna. He's like, okay, here I am, and I'm willing to come to you, and I'm willing to show you how to come to me.
Mhm.
All you need to do is surrender.
That's
And
right.
I just love that. It's such
Mm.
a wonderful encouragement from the Lord to know that nothing goes in vain. Whatever little steps we make, however we try to surrender our body, our mind, our words, our heart to
Mm.
Krishna, then he's accepting everything, every little bit of it.
Mm.
And by that, he's going to pull us and bring us closer to him. And that was my desire.
Mm.
That was my quest. It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if I remember sitting down South Brighton Beach when I was 12 years old, and
Mm.
I closed my eyes and I made a prayer. I said, look, all I want to do is see you. If I can
Mm.
just see you, I
Mm.
promise you I'll be good for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And I was
Yeah.
expecting that when I opened my eyes, he was going to be standing there. I didn't know who God was. I just knew that God existed.
Yeah.
But since then, I can honestly say, 40 years later, I was walking down the same beach
Mhm.
and I was chanting Hare Krishna, you know, in bliss. The sun was shining, the
Mm.
ocean was there.
Mhm.
And I just had this moment where I realized
Mhm.
I can see God, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that I'm the light of the sun and the moon.
Mm.
So there he was in the sun.
Yeah.
And he says, of bodies of water, I am the ocean. So there he was in the ocean. And then he
Yes.
also says that he's non-different from his name. He's here in his name. So there I was, chanting Hare Krishna
That's right.
by the ocean, looking at the
The
sun.
sun. Yeah.
My heart was dancing. The same beach,
Yes.
40,
Yes.
50 years later,
Later. Yeah.
but actually that desire had been fulfilled. I felt
Yeah.
as if I was in the warm embrace of the
Yes.
Lord.
Yeah.
Maybe he
Absolutely.
wasn't like standing in front of me in the form of Tribanga Sundara playing his flute, but certainly I could feel his presence, and
Yeah.
certainly I could see him
Yeah.
in the sun and the ocean and the
Wow.
sand. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
he always keeps his promises. That's what I would say. So yeah, that's one of my favorite verses.
Yes. Awesome. Sorry. Before we close, I just got a question that come through in the chat. So, what will be one key message that someone needs to do that ISKCON really encourages to do, like a bhakta or someone who's engaged in spiritual service? What is one key thing that they should be doing?
Chant Hare Krishna.
Chant Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Yeah.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada said, and be happy.
Nice.
That
Awesome.
that's it. Like seriously, if you do that
Mhm.
every single day,
Mhm.
then like Krishna says, for those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So you're opening the door. And by chanting the holy name, then you're enabling that sun of Krishna to shine in your heart, and he'll make all arrangements, just like he did for me. Just this little 12-year-old girl in Christchurch, South Brighton. There wasn't even any Hare Krishnas there, but somehow or other my brother went to
Yes.
Australia and he got a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and he brought it back, and then the
Yes.
lady I babysat for became a Hare Krishna, and because of her, then it
Yeah.
was all
Yeah.
meant to be. So
Correct. Yeah.
if we chant, and another really valuable thing I'd like to share is that by reading these literatures that Srila Prabhupada's left, I think very, very important, because he is a bona fide spiritual master.
Yeah.
And by hearing from him, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed, and loving service to the Supreme Lord is established as an irrevocable fact.
Sure.
So lucky for us, there's an app that you can get on your phone or your
Okay.
computer.
Yeah.
One's called Vedabase, and it's got all of
Database.
the books,
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. We can type it up later if you want.
Yeah.
Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the books that Srila Prabhupada translated with the original Sanskrit, with the word for word and beautiful purports explaining those verses, so we don't have to struggle to understand them. They are all available for free. So there's, for an Android phone, it's Gita base, and for Apple, it is Veda base.
Okay,
And
just
they're
give
just
me.
brilliantly done. You just tap on the screen and all the
Yeah.
verses come up, all the chapters come up. And so every day, if you just read for 10 minutes, you know, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, that becomes your reality, you know, and
Right.
the craziness of the world dissipates, and you realize who you really are and what the purpose of life really is, and then you just live like a lotus, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
on the water, untouched by the madness of this world. And especially at the moment, it is very mad.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yes.
the more shelter we can take, the better, isn't it? So yeah,
Absolutely.
chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And then if
Awesome.
you can read Srila Prabhupada's books, everything you need to know is in those books.
Yeah.
And when they
Absolutely.
asked him, Prabhupada, you know, who will run this movement when you leave? And Prabhupada said, I will never leave. I will live forever in my books, and
Right.
my followers will live with me. So
Mm.
we have the association of
Yes.
the
Yeah.
greatest saint that ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. And
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. No.
making himself available to us in his books. We pick them
Yeah.
up, we read
Yeah.
them. We're
Yeah.
sitting at his lotus feet, hearing directly from him. I mean,
Mm. Awesome.
what more do
Yeah.
we need?
No, not much, I suppose. Yeah. All right, Mataji, it's more than an hour, so thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have a
Thank
chat
you
like
so much.
this. I feel really blessed. I can feel my soul like vibrating inside, because it's like, when you started with uh, Prabhupada's history and how he was 23 years old, he was picked. His teacher said, "This is your task. Go around the world, spread Krishna conscious." It's one thing to receive messages. We all do receive messages, I think, but it's another thing to really action on those messages. Really say, "Okay, my teacher has said me something. He's a bona fide teacher. Now my duty is to not to pursue this worldly, materialistic desires, but to stick to the task that I was given." So to get off get those messages again, like it's reassuring for someone like me who's very much attached to the materialistic world, to kind of understand, now this is not everything. This materialistic world is very illusionary, and to get reinforced that just chanting Mahamantra is the way to realize bhakti or salvation in this Kali Yuga. Is again, it's a great thing to hear that message again. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for your valuable time in sharing your knowledge
you're
and
welcome.
love with us, Mataji. It's such an honor.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribol.
If you want to be really inspired, there's a beautiful book, all his life story. It's called
Hmm.
Your Ever Well Wisher, or Prabhupada Leelamrita, and it tells you the whole story of his life from when he was born until when he
Right.
left in 1977. It
Okay.
is so inspiring, because
Hmm.
one thing I just wanted to say to you as encouragement, Prabhupada was 23 when he got the order. He was 69 when he came to America. So
Oh
in
wow.
between that time, he had 5 children, 2 businesses. You
Oh
know,
wow.
he was a householder for most of that time, but he never ever let go of that desire to please his guru, and
Yes.
he always practiced Krishna consciousness. But it wasn't easy for him. If you read the struggle that he went through, unbelievable. He got
Oh
refused 3 times by Sumati Maraji before she actually allowed him on the boat to go to America, because she was
wow.
worried that he would die on the way because he was so old. But
Wow.
he never gave up. He was
Mm,
so persistent and so determined
mm,
and so compassionate. So
mm.
we can all take great encouragement from that. You know,
Sure.
that 40 years it took him to get to that point. So
Mm.
however long it takes us, that's not a problem, but at least we should try to take a step in the right direction each day.
That's so true. Wow, that's great. Such an honor, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Hare Krishna.